we have to get through the COVID portion, then the real calamity is going to hit. And I'm not belittling COVID, but the reaction and the overreaction by government to COVID has been, this is going to go down as got to be the top 10 boondoggles in government history of the world.
Welcome to 10 with Palm, a series created to dialogue for 10 minutes with community leaders and those of influence throughout Arizona. My name is Dan Palm, and our guest today is Jeff Oravits. Jeff has lived in northern Arizona for more than 25 years and is a former member of the Flagstaff City Council. Today, Jeff is a host of the Jeff Oravits Show here in northern Arizona on 97.1 FM, the Big Talker Radio. Jeff, it's great to have you here on a cool Flagstaff morning. You lived in Flagstaff, you lived in northern Arizona for more than 25 years, and now you host a radio show, you have for a number of years. Why is that?
Well, it's kind of a long road that getting onto the radio. I was on the Flagstaff City Council, and when they didn't want me to serve anymore on the council, I ran for re-election, as you know, and didn't make re-election. I was offered a gig to do a daily radio show, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to still kind of keep it going. I didn't really want to run for any other office. You know, I've had people ask me over the years, hey, would you run for Congress, run for this, run for that? I'm like, nah, I just want to do something where I'm not that level of commitment. Little did I know that radio was going to be quite the commitment it was.
What's one of your most memorable guests on the radio?
Oh man, I've had a lot of guests. You know, you get to interview. I like to pursue people that I'm interested in their topics, or I've been following them for years. And one of them would be author Jim Rogers, who's traveled the world. He traveled the world in a motorcycle like 2.5 years, then did it in a car. He's an investor. Actually started a fund with George Soros many years ago. Different philosophies they have, but I interviewed him from Singapore. But man, he was very prompt, and if you emailed something he didn't like it, he kind of bit back at you real quick. But then I got him on, and he was just the nicest guy. Like, here's a guy who's got to be worth however many tens and tens of millions. And, you know, you talk to him to set up the appointment. You call him, and he's just like, okay, let's do it. And then he's the nicest guy, but it was intimidating because it's kind of like one of those, you know, those hero type interviews where you're like, I really, you know, followed this guy for a long time. Peggy Grandy. She was Ronald Reagan's personal assistant. Interviewed her, and just hearing those stories about kind of behind the scenes of Ronald Reagan, the real guy, and those, I always love those and try to get to know people. It's not just the famous people. I mean, I've had some of my best ones where you're just interviewing, you know, quote unquote regular folks who aren't, you know, famous like that, don't have that kind of pull, or the issues that they may have that they can't get out there. I mean, that's one of the big reasons I do this show every day, and it's getting harder and harder to connect with your politicians, and things are literally fenced off. So you don't have that opportunity a lot of people don't have that opportunity to talk directly with their politicians.
So you're suggesting that the communication is becoming more fenced off with particular areas that you can and can't go. Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you had what happened at the Capitol January 6th, and now that's fenced off, and who knows if that'll ever go away. You've got troops on the streets there. You know, does that ever go away? The Arizona Capitol with COVID, or your local, your councils, your school boards. You can't go and talk to these folks directly anymore. And good luck, you know, do they answer the email? They're doing things virtually, and everybody's getting really comfortable, especially politicians. It's a lot easier to deal with your constituents if you don't have to see them, and deal with those raw emotions that happen face to face. I mean, I faced it when I was on the council in Flagstaff, and people would come and pack those the chamber, and that brings a kind of energy that you're never going to get in a virtual environment. But I see these politicians with some, and I get it to a degree because some of them are getting threats, but some of them have also been there so dang long that they've lost total connection with the people. I mean, you've been there since the 70s. We're in a different world now.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges facing northern Arizona? You know, you've been in the Flagstaff City Council for 4 years.
Yeah.
You've been on radio for at least that long, if not more. You're talking with folks around the nation and around Arizona and here in northern Arizona. What are you hearing and what are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges that we're facing?
Sure. Well, people are concerned. I mean, they feel like the country's heading in the wrong direction. No matter if you're on the left or the right, it's not a partisan issue. People feel like America they knew is slipping away. So I think that's going to have huge impacts everywhere. Not just we're facing similar things that they're facing in other parts of the country as well. And I think a lot of them are economic. And I don't think people realize that yet because we're still in the midst of COVID. And I said this back in March when this hit, that we have to get through the COVID portion, then the real calamity is going to hit. And I'm not belittling COVID. I know I'll get a message on that because there's been a lot of people that got sick, a lot of people that have died. But the reaction and the overreaction by government to COVID has been, this is going to go down as got to be the top 10 boondoggles in government history of the world when they're looking back 100 years and studying this thing. And we haven't even hit that economic wall yet, so you're going to see that on the local economies. Now, a place like Flagstaff, which we're beautiful sitting in front of the courthouse here today, they're going to do a little better than a lot of places because there's a lot of money that comes in here and there's a lot of tourists and people come here to flee the Phoenix and the big cities, but they're still going to feel it here. And what I know right now is you got a budget surplus in Arizona, but it's being buoyed up by the federal government. They're pumping money in stimulus and people too. People are getting the stimulus. So everybody's got this kind of false sense that, it's bad, but it's not so bad. But it's really bad when you have a $30 trillion debt and 100+%, 110% GDP to debt ratio. So back to what you originally asked, how is that going to affect northern Arizona? I think over time, whether it's next month or 5 years from now, these towns are going to have huge budget shortfalls. And they've made their governments bigger and bigger over the years. And I know people hear, hey, you want a smaller government? Well, yeah, absolutely. And they hear that and think, oh, you don't want any government. No, we've grown this so much that as the economic woes continue and this all catches up with us, these governments are going to have a hard time. Don't even get me going on the pensions. All these people reliant on these pensions going forward. I've had experts on that. We're in a heck of a, we'll call it a windstorm. We're dealing with the wind. We're in a heck of a storm with the pension problems. So I think you're going to see it's going to get harder to pave those roads. It's going to get harder to take care of those pension issues. The last mayor says she fixed the pension problems, and she was full of it. They borrowed, they mortgaged City Hall to pay for obligations, which means they mortgaged the future. Great, they did it at artificially low interest rates. That's fine, I get it. You're refinancing at a lower rate. So I think you're going to have a lot of problems with these local communities when it comes to their budgets, and it's going to affect everybody in a big way.
So you've run for political office before. You were a former Flagstaff City Council member for 4 years. Yeah. Any thought to, you've spent this time talking with people, on the radio for years now. You're getting much more versed in topics that are of import to here in northern Arizona and throughout the state. Ever thought about another run for office?
Yeah, I never say never anymore. I never speak in absolutes. And right now I still have I have kids that are younger, although one's going to be going off to college next year. The federal side is so bad. And, I talk to a lot of members of Congress, senators, and you do this and you have the privilege of really meeting so many people. And it's worse than what they'll say in public. And you got 435 plus 100 senators, just jockeying for power all the time. And these people that have been there since the 70s. So I've had guests on, and I try to remain positive and optimistic, believe it or not. I've had guests on that, you're not going to change it at the federal level. And, I think more and more, I'm like, I don't know how you change this at the federal level until the country goes through a serious adjustment and recognition of the problems we actually have. These politicians aren't going to do it, though. We need term limits on a national level, which you're never going to get because they don't want to limit their job. At a local level, right behind us, you had people in here one of them just left 24 years. Would you start in your mid-20s, and then you're moving on to a federal position. It's totally disconnected, Republican and Democrat, from reality, most of them. So do I want to get involved with that? Maybe not. I won't say never, but I wouldn't want to be taking the helm right now. And I know that sounds like, but somebody's got to jump in there and take the leadership role. But a lot of these people have driven us near the cliff. Do you want to grab it at that helm? Now, with that said, that's on the national level. We need people on the local level, because you're going to run into them on the street here. Your school boards, which people can't name one school board member. Your councils, your county board. People need to run for those positions because there can be a big impact, believe me, when you get in there. On the federal side, though, good luck changing it at this point.